And
The
they've
question I
exercised
was
that.
asking, is this wise judgment to play around with the sanctity of the treaty because it might damage India's credibility and credentials? That's the question I'm asking. It is undoubtedly the government's call and right to do what it wants, but is it a wise call at this point?
Let me give you my personal opinion. My personal opinion has been that since the impact will not be immediate, I don't think this is a move. This is a step that should be taken. But having said that, I also believe that with the step that the government has taken, it has built some psychological pressure on Pakistan. After all, we have been trying to find ways of trying to make Pakistan mend its ways, which they have not been willing to do. So this is one of the steps that the government has taken. I mean, it's their judgment that it's in the interest of India, and they have taken this step now.
And you concur with the government.
I would go along. I would go along.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. 1 week after the horrific attack in Pahalgam, we examined the steps India and Pakistan have taken against each other. What do they amount to? How much will they worry the other side? Or at this stage, are they more symbolic and psychological than substantive? Finally, what are the chances of military action? And if it happens, do we have any sense of what the outcome could be? My guest is India's former High Commissioner to Pakistan and the author of one of the best books on India-Pakistan relations, India's Pakistan Conundrum, Managing a Complex Relationship. He is, of course, Sharat Sabharwal. Mr. Sabharwal, let me start with what's considered the most significant step taken by India against Pakistan, placing the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. How do you read this? Is it mainly symbolic or, as you said to me, psychological, or is it meaningful?
Well, Karan, first thing we have to recognize is that this is a very precious treaty for Pakistan. Pakistan is a water-stressed country. It's a lower riparian. It's a very precious treaty for them. Not many countries, as you would know, lower riparians have this kind of arrangement with their upper riparian. And I must also tell you that has been an apprehension in the mind of Pakistan's strategic planners and in the public mind also over the years that India may at some stage try to divert their share of water for its own use. So just to tell you, when I was High Commissioner, I was frequently asked questions about this. And in keeping with our policy, then I would say that that was not our intention. Now they face a situation where India has said that it's putting the treaty in abeyance. Not only that, but India has said that it will actively work to divert their share of water for its own use, withhold that water. So you can imagine what kind of uncertainty it creates in their minds regarding their water future. That is one aspect of it. And you would have seen that all the measures announced by India, this is the one that has bitten the most. They are most agitated about it. Now,
Well,
as
can I interrupt at that point and say, does this mean that this is playing psychologically on their fears and anxieties?
No, no, no. I mean, that's one aspect of it. But I was coming to the impact on the ground. Now, what will be the impact of this move on the ground? In the immediate current, we can stop giving them hydrological data, which is useful for them to manage water flows from their side, floods, etc. We can build our storage and hydroelectric projects without informing Pakistan, which we are required to do under the treaty. So there is, that uncertainty in their mind. They don't know what India is doing. Earlier, they used to get all the information. But more importantly, we can build these projects without adhering to the technical stipulations of the treaty, many of which have become outdated. So that's one aspect of it in the immediate. But as far as diversion of substantive quantities of Pakistan's water is concerned, that would require massive infrastructure. A, for storage of water, B, diversionary canals to take it to the Indian plains, because after all, we cannot use that much water in Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. Now, that is technologically challenging because of the heights at which those rivers flow, especially Indus. It is costly. It is time consuming. My point here is that the bite of this move in the immediate, in terms of diverting Pakistan's share of water, may not be consequential.
Absolutely. Let me just make that simple for the audience. We cannot divert or stop the waters immediately because the infrastructure necessary to do so, the dams, the reservoirs, the storage facilities simply do not exist. And it could take us years to construct them. Until they're constructed, the question of diverting or stopping water doesn't arise. So that is something that would happen in the medium and long term. But in the short term, in the immediate term, we can deny them hydrological data, which is critical during the monsoons. Is that correct?
Yes, no, that's largely correct. But I would only add one rider here, which is that we have built some kind of storage capacity with the hydroelectric projects. Each project has some storage. Now, one of the worries in Pakistan has been that when all those projects are built, it would give India a cumulative storage with which it could influence the seasonal flows of water during the crop sowing season and therefore create troubles for them. And I think we have some capability on that front even today because we have utilized only about 20% of our hydroelectric potential on those rivers. But even with that, we have some kind of, but as I said, consequential ability to divert Pakistan's share of water is still not there.
You say we have some ability even now, given the limited facilities we've built to affect the seasonal flow of water. But in fact, if I've got my facts correct, we've only at the moment established a capability of some 3 million acre feet of water. We can go up to 18 or 20,000 acre feet, but we haven't got anywhere near it. So even what we can do today in terms of affecting seasonal flow of water is pretty minimal.
Yeah, no, that's not million acre feet. You are talking of the total hydroelectric capacity on these rivers. According to my knowledge, is about 18 to 20,000 megawatts worth of projects. Now, we have built, I was seeing a report in Times of India the other day, my own information is dated, and it talked of some 3,000, etc., which amounted to less than 20%. So you're absolutely right. But we do have some capacity there. How much it can influence, I don't know. But as I said earlier, these will not be consequential.
So, to sum up this particular bit of the interview, we are creating a sense of anxiety, if not verging on panic in Pakistan, because for them, this is a precious treaty, as you called it. They are a water-stressed country. They're a lower riparian country. They need the water because, after all, the Indus Waters accounts for 80% of their agriculture and pretty close to 20-25% of GDP. So, first of all, it's fear, anxiety, close to panic. Secondly, there is some impact we can have on seasonal flows of water, but it's pretty minimal. But the main impact would happen several years down the road when we construct the dams and reservoirs and storage, which will enable us to divert or stop flow of water. That is something that's not likely to happen for several years. It's a medium or long-term concern.
That's right. I mean, that about sums it up.
Let me then, in this context, quote to you what the Jal Shakti Minister C.R. Patil said publicly the other day. We will ensure that not even a drop of water from the Indus River goes to Pakistan. To be able to do that, you are actually talking of cutting off the flow of the Indus River altogether. That would create a sea in India. It would waterlog us because that is a constantly flowing river. So it's actually impossible to ensure that not even a drop goes to Pakistan. I know he may have been speaking rhetorically, but I just want to point out to the audience it's impossible to do without seriously endangering waterlogging, flooding your own country.
No, I think he was, as you rightly said, my own reading of that statement is he was talking rhetorically, not a drop. No, even if we build all the projects, not a drop is not technically feasible. I think what he meant was that we'll build projects to hold substantive quantities of water flowing to Pakistan. That's my reading of his statement. Karan, you would have also noticed he didn't mention the time frame in which we'll achieve this. He said, or from the reports that I have seen, that in that meeting in the Jal Shakti ministry, they considered short, medium, and long-term steps. So I think what he was talking, from what I can judge, would pertain to the medium to long term.
But the important point is he was talking rhetorically, he wasn't talking literally.
Clear, Karan. How can you stop each drop of these rivers going to Pakistan? It's not.
Can you hear me clearly? Your volume has gone down very sharply. Can you hear me, Mr. Sabharwal?
Yes, I can hear you now. So
Okay.
I was saying that he was mentioning each drop of water, which is technically not feasible. So I think he was talking rhetorically, figuratively, but the intention was to convey that we'll build projects to hold back substantive quantities of water.
Let me at this point, Mr. Sabharwal, ask a wider question. India, as you know, is proud of being the world's biggest democracy. We're committed to upholding global institutions, and in particular, we're committed to what's called a rules-based international order. Now, the Indus Waters Treaty was negotiated under the auspices of the World Bank. Is it good for our credibility to play around with the sanctity of the treaty when we didn't do this in 1965, in 1971, in 1998? On all three of those occasions, we were at war, and there would have been some excuse for playing around with the sanctity of the treaty, but we didn't. We aren't at war now. What has happened is horrific, but it's much less than war. Is it right for us to play around with the sanctity of the treaty at this point? Are we damaging our credibility? After all, we aspire one day to be a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Are we damaging our credentials in that regard?
Well, what rules-based order are we talking of, Karan? Let me talk of another permanent member of the UN Security Council, the United States. When the President of the United States says he will take Greenland, he wants to make Canada a province of his country, and he'll take Panama Canal, etc., etc. Whereas the rules-based international order, has been in name, but in actual fact, many countries have done pretty much what was in their interest. And
But Mr. Sabharwal, President Trump has been mocked and ridiculed and lampooned for expressing those sentiments about Greenland, about Canada, about the Panama Canal. He's been ridiculed. Surely we don't want to put ourselves in a similar position.
No, I wasn't saying, we haven't said anything of the sort. We have just put this treaty in abeyance. But I was also coming to the fact that there are other countries, for example, China, an arbitration award on South China Sea, they rejected. United States has withdrawn unilaterally from treaties. The point I was making was it is the judgment of the government of the day. Now, it's their judgment that it's in India's interest at this time to put this treaty in abeyance and exercise some pressure on Pakistan. And
the question I was asking, is this wise judgment to play around with the sanctity of the treaty because it might damage India's credibility and credentials? That's the question I'm asking. It is undoubtedly the government's call and right to do what it wants, but is it a wise call at this point?
Let me give you my personal opinion. My personal opinion has been that since the impact will not be immediate, I don't think this is a move, this is a step that should be taken. Having said that, I believe
it's a step that shouldn't be taken. I'm just clarifying.
That's a step that should be taken. But having said that, I also believe that with the step that the government has taken, it has built some psychological pressure on Pakistan. After all, we have been trying to find ways of trying to make Pakistan mend its ways, which they have not been willing to do. So this is one of the steps that the government has taken. It's their judgment that it's in the interest of India, and they have taken this step now.
And you concur with the government?
I would go along. Considering what has happened in the history of India and Pakistan relations, considering the fact that we have been trying to look for possibilities of finding measures that would help us in convincing them into mending their ways, I think this needed to be done. Probably this was the time to do it.
Now, in response, Pakistan has said, and I'm quoting their government statement, that it shall exercise the right to hold all bilateral agreements with India, including but not limited to the Simla agreement, in abeyance. And my first question is, would holding the Simla agreement in abeyance worry us?
Look, first thing they have said that the exact language as I see is shall exercise the right.
It's a threat.
If you already exercise the right or not, that's not clear. They say we shall exercise the right. But even if they exercise the right, coming to the Simla Agreement, when did they observe Simla Agreement? Karan, you tell me. The two principal stipulations in that agreement, one was bilateralism, which they violated all along, talking of UN Security Council resolutions. The other was sanctity of the line of control, which they have violated repeatedly. I mean, not only in Kargil, but all these infiltration that has been taking place, heavy firing across the line of control, etc., has been violating the sanctity of the line of control. So, assuming that they were to put it in abeyance, what difference does it make?
Najam
It's
Sethi,
an
who
empty
spoke
threat.
to me
It's an empty
yesterday,
threat.
Najam Sethi, who the former editor, founding
Yes.
editor of Friday Times, as well as the former caretaker chief minister of Punjab, who spoke to me yesterday, said that what Pakistan was hinting at is that they would scrap the bilateral element of the treaty, that they would go back to talking about UN resolutions, they would go back to talking about international involvement in the sorting out of Kashmir. That, he says, is something that India doesn't want. And once again, Pakistan is doing to India what India is doing to Pakistan, i.e., psychologically worrying the country. Just as we're worrying them over water, they are worrying us over going back to UN resolutions. That's his interpretation.
That's precisely the point I was making. The threat that he was holding out, and I think this is the propaganda of Pakistan's security establishment. I'm afraid Najim Sethi is a good friend. When I was in Pakistan, I knew him quite well. But on some of the points in that interview, he voiced the propaganda of Pakistan's establishment. This is one of them. The threat that he is holding out, that Pakistan will give up bilateralism and go to UN Security Council resolutions asking for international mediation, is something that they have been doing all along without putting similar agreement in abeyance. So what is the new threat here? It's an empty threat that they are holding out.
Now, we also have several confidence building measures with Pakistan in areas such as missiles, maritime disasters, the nuclear field. If these are held in abeyance, is it the case that both sides would suffer equally, not India alone?
That's again, the point that first they say shall exercise. So it seems to me that they haven't exercised that option so far. But assuming they were to put those agreements on military confidence building measures in abeyance, those agreements help them as much as they help India. After all, those agreements were concluded when both the countries came to the conclusion that the agreement in question was in their interest. For example, the agreement on non-attacks against the nuclear facilities of each other, or incidents at sea, or giving advance notice for test of ballistic missiles, etc., etc. These are agreements that help both sides. So who are they trying to hurt?
In other
Even
words,
sanctity.
both
Again,
sides will suffer, not
yeah,
India alone.
if I may make just one more point, when they talk of sanctity of line of control, assuming they stop respecting it, that then applies to India also. Then it's raw power. Who can do how much? Does that help them?
Now, the Foreign Secretary's briefing of G20 ambassadors, which I believe has happened on not just one occasion, but on two occasions, suggests that India is also seeking to diplomatically isolate Pakistan. There's no doubt that we've got expressions of sympathy from all over the world. By one count on television, I was told that it's pretty close to 130 countries that have expressed their sympathy and concern. But in a very real sense, that was to be expected. The critical question is, can we alter the way major countries hereafter view Pakistan? Can we change their attitude, their policy to Pakistan?
No. This has been the dilemma, Karan. Our diplomacy has been very successful in mobilizing international opinion in our favor after each such egregious terror attack. And this has happened this time also. But things become a little different, when it starts moving towards escalation. That's when major countries ask for restraint, etc., etc. For example, last time Balakot strike, there was not any strong reaction in public to that. But when things were moving, possibilities that things may move up the escalation ladder, that's when all countries counseled restraint. You have seen the United States. President Trump himself said those two countries will figure it out. But I think the State Department has said that they are in touch with both sides and they would expect the parties, or they would urge the parties some such language to reach a responsible solution. So there are hints of that coming later on, asking for restraint. The only other thing is that all countries know what Pakistan has been doing. It's not as if we are educating them. It's true that the Ministry of External Affairs has to brief diplomats after every such attack. This has to be done, inform them about the attack in question, Pakistan's involvement. But it's not as if we are educating them about something new. They know what Pakistan has been doing, but they go according to their own interests.
Well, it's a little bit more than that, surely, Mr. Sabharwal. The New York Times yesterday said, and I'm quoting, India has publicly presented little evidence to support its claim that Pakistan was behind it. So if we are to convince the world to change their attitude to Pakistan, do we need to make that evidence public? Or is there a danger that the Pakistani position, let's have a transparent, neutral, independent investigation carried out by a third country? And by some reports, China and Russia are said to be interested in this idea. Is that going to carry sway? Because it sounds to people as if that's an objective, neutral, impartial way of getting to the bottom of this, particularly if the evidence that India is making available is, as the New York Times says, very little.
Karan, first of all, let me say that whatever evidence we present, Pakistan is not going to accept it. We had Kasab, Ajmal Kasab in our capacity. The fellow had told us that he was a Pakistani. Pakistani press was saying he was a Pakistani. They had gone to his village. And yet it took Pakistan government, I think, 6 weeks to admit that he was a Pakistani national.
But they did. In the end, people like Tariq Khoza went public to say that the 2008 terror attack was planned and launched from Pakistan.
No.
Details of it in the Dawn article he wrote in 2015.
Yeah. Listen, Karan, that happened much later. Tariq Khosa's article came much later. Let me explain the sequence of events. But the point I was making was that even in that case where we had captured a Pakistani national, they were denying it. It's only later on, under international pressure, under the pressure which we had built up, that was the only case, the first and the last time, that Pakistan admitted that the attack was engineered from the Pakistani soil by Lashkar-e-Toiba. And they handed us over, I was High Commissioner then, they handed us over almost a 30-page dossier giving us the details of their findings on that. That was the only instance. But initially, I was saying, even in that case, they denied it. So, to convince Pakistan, to convince a party who doesn't want to be convinced is very difficult.
But it's not Pakistan that I'm citing, sir. It's the New York Times.
New York Times. Now, coming to what you're, I don't know, what the source of information on New York Times is. I have seen reports in the Indian press that India has electronic intelligence and some other inputs which indicate very clearly that the attack came from Pakistan. And let me also say, Karan.
Can I clarify for the audience? You're referring to the front page story, the Indian Express 2 days ago, which said that India has got the electronic signatures of what they believe is the resistance front, linked to two locations in Pakistan, one of which is meant to be in Pakistan's Punjab, the other in Pakistan's Sindh. But that is minimal hints. It's not substantive details. Why don't we make that available? Because the diplomats who have been coming out of their meetings with the commissary have told the New York Times that very little evidence has been given to them. That's the message they're sending back to their head offices and capitals.
Karan, the evidence in these cases piles up as time goes on. This is early days. I think the government has provided them, the envoys who were called, whatever information is available for the moment. And as more information comes available, I'm sure we'll share it with our key partners. But let me say this. There were telltale signs before this attack, in the weeks leading up to this attack, that Pakistan may ramp up terror. At least, this was my reading. This was the reading of many others. Pakistan had been blaming us for its own failures in Balochistan.
And we did absolutely nothing about those telltale signs. We dropped our guard. Our intelligence failed. Our security was at a lapse. All of that points the finger of responsibility towards us.
No, that of course. But let me complete the first part. So they were threatening retaliation. That narrative became shrill after the Jafar Express hijacking. Then you had their army chief talking of the discredited two-nation theory, raking up Kashmir, etc., etc. Then there were signs on the line of control. There had been greater volatility, signs of infiltration, and so on. As to what steps we took and how could this attack take place, there are obvious questions which will remain, and I'm sure government will study them to draw appropriate conclusions. But for the moment, the first order of the day is to deal with Pakistan.
I'm not at all quarreling with you, but I'm simply putting an opposite viewpoint because we're having a discussion. And the key concern today is we need to convince the world that the hand of Pakistan is clearly and visibly behind what happened. What the diplomats who've spoken to the New York Times have said is that India is citing the past as indicative of what has happened in the present. And the diplomats are saying to those people, this is not necessarily always the case. Secondly, undoubtedly, we're offended by General Asim Muni's choice of language calling Kashmir the jugular vein. But the truth is, the jugular vein was the term Jinnah used. He's simply quoting his own Qaid-e-Azam. We can't start taking offense if he repeats what the Qaid-e-Azam said 70, 80 years
No,
ago.
it's a
So,
timing.
the point I'm making is that at a time when we need to build up a credible case against Pakistan, are we doing enough to do so? Because the
No,
reports in the New York Times are worrying and distressing.
yeah. First of all, it's the timing of his statement and the manner in which it was made, the backdrop in which it was made. I think that was significant. I know jugular vein is an old phrase. I'm sure we have shared with the foreign envoys the information we have. As it builds up, as I said, I'm sure we'll share it with our key partners. Now, whether you are asking, the government to produce a smoking gun, I don't know if they can produce it. In these cases, it's very difficult to come by information. It takes time. You have to put it together with the help of other countries, and I'm sure they are doing it.
How then do we counter what many people internationally consider a good proposal from Pakistan? We may not like it, but others consider it a sensible proposal that we should have an independent, objective, neutral investigation.
I don't know who has said. I haven't, except for China, which has supported.
Shehbaz Sharif came up with
No,
the
no, no,
idea.
no, 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 no. I
And
know that Shahbaz Sharif.
today's papers in India
Yeah,
suggest that the Russians
yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah,
Chinese, in
yeah.
some sense, are believing that this is a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, so I know that the proposal was made by Shahbaz Sharif. I know that the Chinese have supported that proposal. And what else did you expect the Chinese to do? I haven't seen any other country having spoken in favor of that proposal first. It's not as if there is a groundswell of support for that Pakistan proposal. The other thing I must say that what is impartial? Who is impartial in this world? Which country is impartial? Every country serves its own interest. Let me remind you that we took Kashmir to the United Nations to complain against an attack by Pakistan in a state which had acceded to India. And the great power politics of that day, that impartial environment, turned it into a dispute about which country did Kashmir belong to, India or Pakistan. Now that's impartiality for you. I don't think we should put our fate in the hands of third parties in these cases. We should collect all the information, build a strong case, hold Pakistan to account with all the means at our disposal.
When we've collected the information, should we make it public so the world knows how good the case we have can be?
I know whatever they can make public, they will make public. Not everything can be made public. That can compromise your sources of information. But I'm sure, as I said earlier, they will share it with our key partners. They will make it public, whatever they can make public.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Let's then at this point, Mr. Sabharwal, come to the biggest concern of all, the question, could there be military action? After the Prime Minister's speech in Bihar, after his more recent Mann Ki Baat on Sunday, promising to identify, track and punish every terrorist and their backers, pursue them to what he called the ends of the earth, punish them in a way in which they've never dreamt about, do you see some form of military action as a real possibility in the days and weeks to come?
Karan, it's very difficult to say what course the government will take. They have announced some measures. We have assessed those measures. I have given you my assessment. Now, it's very difficult to say what further steps they may take to build up pressure on Pakistan. One is going only by the pattern of what happened in 2016 after Uri attack, the surgical strikes, and then after Pulwama in 2019, the Balakot strike. Going by that pattern, one could expect a kinetic, punitive action by government of India. What shape it would take, one doesn't know. Of course, if there is such an action and, it's made public, which probably it will be because of the public sentiment involved, my own view has been that the government of the day should have the freedom to choose the action it takes, which I'm sure our government has that freedom, at a time and place of its choosing without having to make it public in order to reduce the chances of escalation. Sometimes when you don't announce it, the other side absorbs it. But when you do something and announce it, then the chances of escalation are high. So if something of that kind happened, there would be retaliation from the other side. The challenge, of course, would be escalation control, which we were able to do in 2019, and I hope if it happens.
Well, I'm not sure we were able to do it. The Americans enforced it. If Pompeo is to be believed, and he was the Secretary of State, they stepped in. But
I know
let me go back to 2019, because 2019 is an illustration of what happens when India takes military action. At that point in 2019, when we struck Balakot, two questions arose. One, how effective was our strike? There's a big dispute about the effectiveness of it. And secondly, there was a retaliation from Pakistan, which resulted in India losing planes and one of India's pilots being captured. If this time there is kinetic or military action, will we get the better of Pakistan? It's disputed by the world whether we got the better of Pakistan in 2019. That's why I ask, will we come out winners?
Well, it's very difficult for me to say. I am not a military expert. I don't know what options are available. Now, how effective.
I've lost you, sir. You've muted yourself.
No, I don't think.
You're okay now. You keep talking.
Yeah.
Go back.
Yeah, okay. So, as I said, how effective the Balakot strike was, that's a whole different discussion. I cannot assess. I'm not a military expert. I don't know what options are available, and I don't know what option we'll exercise and how effective it might be. We just have to wait and watch.
Let me ask a wider question. Did retaliatory action in 2016 after Uri or in 2019 after Pulwama actually achieve anything for us? It certainly hasn't deterred terrorist incidents in Jammu and Kashmir. Pahalgam has happened 6 years later, and there have been a spate of small terrorist incidents that have been happening in the last 6 months. By the way, they seem to have been happening once or twice a week. As you say in the article you wrote for the Indian Express yesterday, and I'm quoting you, Pakistan has so far shown no change in its behavior. So have the retaliatory measures we took in 2016 and 2019 actually achieved anything for us?
Look, it does when some such action is taken, for example, Balakot, regardless of etc. It was crossing a line. It was crossing a line which we hadn't crossed, which means not hitting not only a target in POK, but in Pakistan proper. So that was a signal that was given. Now, it does create some uncertainty in the minds of Pakistan's terror planners. But the difficulty, of course, is these are all options lying in the tactical domain, and their impact is temporary until the other side recovers, adapts, and then goes back to its bad ways again. My own view has been that, with the kind of options that are available, the only way to secure an enduring change in Pakistan's behavior through military means is an all out war with devastating economic and human cost, which gives them a massive blow, something on the scale of Bangladesh. That, of course, then takes us to the nuclear domain. So that
And
has
it
been.
also raises the question, are we capable of it? Let's not assume that we're capable of it. Let's be
That's for
honest and
the
ask, are we capable of it?
That's for the military people to judge. I am not in a position to judge. I believe we have built up our defenses to the point that we can take whatever action we want. But it's very difficult for me to give you an assessment on that.
Two quick
But
questions.
that is one limitation we have faced, and that's why we have been looking for various ways of forcing Pakistan into mending its ways. And that is
But they
where
haven't succeeded. That's the point I'm making. We tried in 2016, we tried in 2019, and Pakistan is continuing to attack us with terror. And what happened in Pahalgam is the worst terror incident affecting civilians since 2008. So
well,
clearly, that deterrence is not working.
we have had periods of lull. Whenever we have exercised such options, there has been a period of lull that follows. But as I said, the other side adapts, recovers, and then goes back to its bad ways. So that is how it has been. So if you ask me, have we been able to secure an enduring change in Pakistan's behavior? No, not so far. And we have to see the steps that the government has taken now, especially the Indus Waters Treaty, whatever else we may do, whether this time those steps convince Pakistan to mend its behavior permanently.
Let me ask you two last questions. At the moment, the Pakistan Army's reputation is at a particularly low ebb in their own country. It faces critical challenges from Afghanistan. At one point of time, it faced challenges from Iran. They may have abated, but they're still there. It faces an internal terrorist problem that is getting worse, and there are said to be fissures within the ranks of the army itself. Questions are being raised about General Asim Munir. In these circumstances, how much of a challenge does the Pakistan army pose to India if India were to initiate military action?
Again, Karan, you have to ask a military expert. My own assessment is that they are not in a position to fight a war at this stage. You have mentioned some factors, but it's their economy, it's their internal situation, it's terrorism, which is rife in parts of Pakistan. And I don't think they are in a position to fight a war or they would like to fight a war. I don't think we would like a war either. We have a good growth story going. So would we like to damage it? So what action we take, as I said, I don't know. But do we want a war? I haven't heard anyone saying that, except to say that we'll take all actions to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
My last question. In the statement that the Pakistan government initially put out, they said that any attempt to stop or divert the flow of water would be met with what they call the full force across the complete spectrum of national power. That's clearly a suggestion that they're prepared to use their nuclear weapons against India. And the question is this serious or is this schoolboy bluff? Yesterday, Najam Sethi articulated at great length that this is serious. He said that the third aspect of the Pakistan nuclear doctrine was to use precisely the nuclear power they have if their water was threatened. And he added, if we are going to be obliterated, to many Pakistanis, it makes sense to take you down with us. How do you respond to that threat to use nuclear weapons?
Listen, this is a nuclear blackmail that Pakistan has indulged at every conceivable opportunity. They take out their nuclear weapons at the drop of a hat when there is a crisis with India. The attempt is to arouse international anxiety and seek international intervention. Now, the international community used to get very excited about it initially, in the initial years, but I think they have also learned their lessons and they take it in their stride. To saying that, if we are being obliterated, we'll blow ourselves up. I think the Pakistani elite and generals have it all very good. They are exploiting their country. They have a good life, and I don't think they are about to blow themselves up. I would also add that Pakistan has announced certain red lines for use of its nuclear weapons over the years. I haven't heard water so much, but there are other red lines that have been announced, and we are nowhere close to that red line. So I would for the moment treat it as a nuclear, as the usual nuclear bluff, and would not take it very seriously.
Mr. Sabharwal, thank you very much for the time you've given me, and thank you very much for clarifying how you view the measures India and Pakistan have taken against each other. I'm deeply grateful. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Karan.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.